Vibranium. Vibranium is a fictional metal that appears in American comic books published by Marvel Comics. Hello, my name is Robert Edwards. I'm a vice president of a nonprofit organization that is concerned about voter suppression. As you recall in the movie Black Panther, vibranium was such a powerful instrument. It was an extraordinary metal that had the ability to absorb, store, and release large amounts of kinetic energy. Well, I'd like to let you know today that voting is vibranium. And you as a person have absorbed so much when it comes to voting. All the things that are out there to keep you from voting. You have stored up your anger and your frustration. But on November the 3rd, it is time to release the kinetic energy called voting. And for those of you who like to do it earlier, then you can do so by early voting, mail-in and absentee. And you then will be demonstrating the power of vibranium. Vote 2020.
Why vote? I'm so glad you asked. Here are 3 reasons why you should vote. First of all, leadership matters. Everything rises and falls based on leadership. Leaders play the crucial role of setting the direction, the focus, and the atmosphere of any organization. Whether it's sports, teams, business, the church, our family, or government, leaders are crucial, and so you should vote for that reason. Secondly, you should vote because you have the opportunity to be involved in selecting who our leaders are going to be. You see, if leaders were selected for us, we would be discontent and we would say, why did they choose that? But since you can be involved in choosing, that's something that you should not miss. The third reason that you should vote is because many sacrifices have been made so that to give you an opportunity to vote. So if you value the sacrifices of Dr. King and John Lewis and Thurgood Marshall, Malcolm X and others, we need to vote on November 3rd. God bless you as you seize this privilege and opportunity.
Carmela, we're here simply to have prayer for our nation, provide in an engaging worship experience, encourage the audience to vote, and rally others and assist them to vote. So if people need rides, they have social distancing, whatever it is, just because you've already voted doesn't mean the engagement has stopped. We got to get souls to the polls on Tuesday, November 3rd, and then we have to stay engaged after we're voted. So once again, we want to have prayer for our nation, have an engaging worship experience, encourage folk to vote, and rally and assist others to vote, because until every ballot is cast, everyone counts and everyone matters.
Let's pray now. Lord and Father of humanity, we pause this evening to remember your call to us. You said, "Oh, no man anything but to love one another, because love fulfills the law." You showed us what is good, to do justly, love mercy, and to walk humbly with you, our God. We want to glorify you this evening and fulfill that law, Lord. And we remember, or as we remember, our collective civic duty. Bless us now in the name of Jesus. Amen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, friends, brothers and sisters, I'd like to introduce to you, live from Queens, New York, at the Community Worship Center, please welcome Senior Pastor, Dr. and our friend, Dr. Abraham Jules. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Carmela. Great to be with you and Doc Woods today. Thank you for the invitation to share in this trick or treat.
It's all treats.
Thank you. All too often, the injustices and inequities of life cause us to question the merits of the political system and the processes by which it operates. Many are convinced that they are pawns in a game that works for the privileged and for the privileged only. And it's difficult to argue against those who say the more things change, the more they stay the same. The wealthy are getting wealthier, the poor are getting poorer, and the underclass continues to expand. Homelessness is on the rise. The pandemic is proliferating, and the country is rife with social uprisings. In fact, there's a whole lot of evidence that the future will be bright. But on the eve of a national election, the question is, what will you do? Assuming that you are a registered voter, what will you do? Will you sit this one out because, as you see it, there's no hope? Will you vote to contribute to the decline in moral, civil, and presidential behavior? Will you vote to risk the future of America to return to the status quo? What will you do? Here are your options. To do nothing is to be complicit. To vote is to be complicit. Either way, your non-action or your action will be complicity of some sort. We used to insist that Christians should not be caught up in politics. And even today, there are those who insist that the church should not be involved in politics. Remarkably, when you enjoy certain privileges, you have the luxury to think that way, despite the fact that all cultural institutions are inherently political, including the church. Ask the popes, ask the reformers, ask the civil rights leaders. Oppressed people who love themselves never allow an opportunity to pass to be a voice for the oppressed. It was Jesus who told an oppressed people, "Render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what belongs to God." What will you do? Will you sit in at a lunch counter? Will you take a seat in the front of the bus? Will you participate in a march and get pelted with rocks and bottles? Those things have already been done, so that I can stand here today and ask you, what will you do? Let it not be said that on the brink of history, for fear of the unknown, you failed to act. Go out and vote, my brothers and sisters. Make a difference. at this time, at this historic election. May God bless you as we continue to pray not only for our immediate families and our church family, but for this country as a whole.
Hear our earnest prayer, O Lord, and hear our humble cry. Precious, loving, and caring Lord, on you we rely. Ever loving, ever living God, on whom no one can compare. All we ask is that you hear our prayer. I am thine, O Lord. I have heard your voice, and it told your love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, blessed Lord, to the precious bleeding side. Ever loving, ever living God, all we ask is that you
Lewis was called by many the conscience of United States Congress. He was one that said it's okay to engage in good trouble. He's the one who was beaten on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. But let me tell you what he said about voting. He said, understand that your vote is precious, almost sacred, he said. It is the most powerful, non-violent tool we have to make a more perfect union. Let me say that one more time. Your vote is precious, almost sacred. It is the most powerful, non-violent tool we have to create a more perfect union. On Tuesday, don't forget that. On Tuesday, it may rain in your city, but don't forget that. On Tuesday, it may snow in your city, but don't forget that. On Tuesday, there may be long lines, and you may feel my vote won't make a difference. My vote does not really count. But you better believe that on Tuesday, you need to be at the polls. If you have to stand in line, if you have to bring your water, even if you have to go through inclement weather, we must vote like we never voted before, because your vote is precious. Your vote is sacred. And your vote is the most important nonviolent tool we have to form a more perfect union. Let your voice be heard. On Tuesday, let's vote. Let's vote. You know, a song comes to mind, given all the challenges and the drama that we have experienced during this election season, during the thinking about the potential of what may be on Tuesday. Somebody may say something to you. You may be running out of time. The line may be long. Weather may be inclement. And you may say, I don't need to do this. I want this song to permeate in your mind. It says, I feel like going on. Though trials come on every hand, I feel like going on. When John Lewis was beaten, he felt like going on. When Martin Luther King was talked about and even stabbed and jailed, he felt like going on. On Tuesday, though trials come on every hand, please, my friend, I need you to remember this song. Feel like going on, because your vote does matter and your vote will count. May God bless you, and make sure you press on and feel like going on.
I feel like going on.
Pennsylvania.
Pine
Is what
Forge, Pennsylvania.
I think that's your school. Is that right, Carmela?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yeah, and we're just excited. We have a stellar headmaster, and H. Clifford Reynolds, Sr., and we have the Pine Forge students. And Carmela, as a graduate of Pine Forge, a proud graduate of Pine Forge, I know you can't wait for this feature.
Oh, I love it.
Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from the great students of Pine Forge Academy and its headmaster, H. Clifford Reynolds.
Hello, I am Principal Reynolds, headmaster of Pine Forge Academy, and I have a simple message for you. Vote. Don't miss your opportunity to let your voice be heard. This is your time to make your mark, and this is your time to stand up and be counted. Listen to our Pine Forge Academy students present more reasons why you should vote. Listen.
Not voting is not letting your voice be heard. Voting is a major opportunity for change for us as African Americans. We need our voices heard. Let others know that Black lives do matter.
I will be a first-time voter in this upcoming voting season. It is our civil responsibility as citizens to decide how our government should be run. Voting is a way to give a voice to the voiceless. Voting is a way to push the ideas that we see will fit our country.
We vote so that situations like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd can be handled justly. We vote so that pandemics and depressions can stop. We vote so that we have #Black Lives Matter allies like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and John Lewis in office.
We need to vote to support our communities. We have friends, family, and neighbors who do not know the importance of voting. We need to be role models to those who do not have the privilege to vote.
With the uprise in racial injustice, we need to exercise our right to vote. In order for change to happen in our nation, we must vote. If this is to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, we need to vote for leaders who have strong morals and ethics.
Voting is a way to maintain a government that is of the people, for the people, by the people. So get out there and vote.
Please vote.
Please vote.
Please vote.
Please vote. Our future depends on it.
Hello, friends. You and I have an opportunity to make an incredible impact for our communities this election and every election. Now, I know you've probably heard well-meaning people say Christians shouldn't vote or Christians shouldn't be engaged in politics, but that's not what the Bible teaches. In fact, in Proverbs 31, verses 8 and 9, and in numerous other Bible texts, God commands us as people of faith to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves and to defend the rights of the poor and the needy. How do we do that in our day and age? One of the ways is by voting. I'd like to share a few practical ways that churches can mobilize members to live their faith on election day. Congregations, let's advocate. Encourage your church and community members to vote regardless of their political affiliation. Use your church phone tree, WhatsApp, or whatever mechanism you use for mass communication and encourage people to get out and vote on election day. Educate. Distribute legislative scorecards that tell how current officials voted on the issues that impact your community. Resource. Use your church bus and offer rides to the polls. Remember, you must remain nonpartisan and offer rides regardless of a rider's political choices. Also, remember social distancing on the bus and cleaning to maintain safety standards. Train up. Let's teach the next generation about biblical justice, putting love into action by voting, and our struggle for the right to vote. Let's not allow any young person to graduate high school without understanding their duty as it goes alone. Take a friend or someone who needs a ride to the polls. Be informed. Print the ACLU Know Your Voting Rights Guide. Be sure to have the election protection hotline number handy in case you face voter intimidation. Be a resource. Assist the person with disabilities or limited English proficiency at the polls. Be an influencer. Use your social media to share voting stories and inspire others to vote. Finally, we can all be mindful. Let's remember those courageous people who've gone before us and sacrificed so that we can have the right to vote. As the late civil rights leader and Congressman John Lewis said, the vote is precious. It's the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in a democratic society, and we must use it. Whether you're an individual Christian or part of a church body, join me on Election Day. Let's be the hands, the feet, and the heart of God and live out our faith by voting and helping others to vote.
Thank you so much, Pastor Dario Hoy, for that excellent information and resources about how we can make a plan to vote. And thank you to Pine Forge Academy. And no, I actually didn't graduate from there, but it still is my school. And my son just went there. And you know, they highlight the importance of making a plan and getting our young people engaged. We took 2 of the young people in our house yesterday to vote for the first time. And I'm gonna tell you, it's a very meaningful experience. So I'm just thankful for the work that they are doing to educate their young people. What's going on next, Pastor Edward Woods?
Well, you know, Carmela Crawford, Esquire. Let me not forget to add the Esquire. We have a feature from church leaders about why it's important to vote. You know, Carmela, you know how we do it, whether it's Message or Conscience or Justice Council, we want to bring as many people together and talk about the importance and the reason why people should vote. So without further ado, listen to these select leaders from the World Church all the way down to give you some inspiration of the importance of voting.
Good evening. Tonight I take a moment to admonish and encourage our brothers and sisters to take their civic duty seriously and go out and vote. Too many of our ancestors or our people were shot at, hosed, persecuted, had dogs sets upon them because they wanted to exercise that right. These victories were hard won, and we owe it to them and their memory to go ahead and vote. In the Bible, we read some admonitions that I share with you. Proverbs 29:2, when the righteous increase, the people rejoice, but when the wicked roll, the people groan. We don't want to groan in this nation. You see, God gives us the right to choose. In Deuteronomy 1:13, he says, choose for your tribes wise and understanding and experienced men, and I will appoint them as your heads. Yes, he has given us the possibility of influencing the outcome of this nation. So do your civic duty, your Christian duty, and go and vote according to the dictates of your conscience. Thank you.
You want to make a difference? Be the difference. This is not a joke. Vote. Don't mope. Vote. You want to be dope? Vote.
We should vote because people died to secure your right to vote. You dishonor your ancestors if you fail to vote. Number 2, you should vote because it is a guaranteed right to every citizen in the United States of America. Number 3, you need to vote if you want to see a change in this country. Please go vote.
There are 3 reasons why you should vote. Number 1, vote for our kids, because the decisions we make today impact their lives in the future. Number 2, vote to honor those who lost their lives for your right to vote. And number 3, voting is how you exercise your voice. If you don't vote, don't complain. Why bother to whine if you don't cast your ballot?
Hello, I'm Elder Calvin Watkins, and I'm pumped up. I'm fired up because guess what? I just voted. I voted because I have grandchildren and I want to make sure that they have a future. I voted, number 2, because there are so many people who gave their lives for me to exercise my right to vote, and I will not let them down. And number 3, because there are so many people with pre-existing health conditions, and I feel that health care for all is important.
Greetings to you, my brothers and sisters, and my friends around the country and indeed around the world. My name is Bill Winston. I am president of the South Atlantic Conference and chair of the Regional President's Council. I have voted in every presidential election probably for the last dozen or so. I started voting when I was of voting age back in the mid to late 60s, and I have not missed a presidential election yet, and I won't miss this one. Of all of the elections that I can remember, they were all very important, but this is the most critical election that I have ever voted in. Why do I vote? It's my duty. It's my duty as a citizen of this great country to vote and let my voice be heard. Why do I vote? Because every vote matters. Why do I vote? Because God has given us the freedom. Yeah. As Adventist Christians, sometimes we say, well, the Lord's got this, and that's true. The Lord does have this, but the Lord wants to see us speak up. You know, you went to the prison, visited me, you gave me a cup of water. I was homeless, and you helped me. I was standing at the ramp at the interstate and asked for some money, and you gave me a couple of dollars. Jesus said, when you've done it to the least of these, our duty is to help the least of these. So, vote. 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 It is the most important thing that you will do civically in these next few weeks. The election is November 3rd. You can vote early. You can vote absentee. But vote. It's critical. We need you. God bless you. Take care of yourself. Goodbye.
Community and spiritual leaders for their insights. You know, what does it mean to vote? Why are we doing this? Why are we engaging? And the thing that resonates with me so much is the idea that we've got children, people have grandchildren, we have a future that we need to make sure that we are setting up the right way. Isn't that right, Edward Woods? I'm just so excited that I love to hear why people are in it. We had the same conversation with our family yesterday. Why are we doing this? I know I'm doing it. What do you think?
Well, you know, I'm doing it for a variety of different reasons, but each of the reasons shared resonated with me with regards to why we need to vote. And I'm just so appreciative of those leaders that are, you know, from the church, you know, Dr. Ellis Simmons and others who just really took the time out and just made it very clear. You know, every election is going to seem like the most important election in our lifetime. But if we don't understand what's on the ballot, because there's always something on the ballot that impacts us, we're going to miss an opportunity. So therefore, my call to election sure that if you haven't voted, it's time to vote. But by November 3rd, when your polling place closes, please, please, please make sure you vote.
Right.
Carmela, it is my distinct privilege and honor to introduce the renowned. Dr. Yolanda Pierce, I had a chance to hear her in Princeton. And I told her, I was like, I'm not stalking you, but as soon as I get an opportunity, I want you to come. It was my friend, Bishop Blaine Hackett from Delaware, and myself. We were just so mesmerized by her message. She was a professor at Princeton University and is now the dean. Let me say it again. I like the sound. The dean of the Howard University School of Divinity. I don't care if she's the first sister. She should have been the dean a long time ago because this lady is heavy. Do you hear me? This lady is heavy. She's engaging. She speaks truth to power, and she has a word from the Lord. She is an ordained minister in her own self. So not only do we have a scholar, we have a theologian, but not only do we have a theologian, for practical purposes tonight, we got a preacher in the house. And there's just one thing I would like to share that she has on her website that just struck me as the perfect way to introduce her. She says, I am not interested in most conversations about equality. To whom would you like to be equal? Given a broken and morally bankrupt system, do you want to be equal to the persons forces, and systems which generate the very terms of your oppression. I am, however, interested in the weightier matters of law, justice, and freedom. How? Lord have mercy, Micah 6:8. How can we act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly? Ladies and gentlemen, my brothers and sisters, without further ado, the distinguished dean from Howard University School of Divinity, Dr. Yolanda Pierce.
Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. It is an honor. It is a true honor, a true privilege to be here tonight. I have been enjoying listening to everyone talk about why we should vote, why this election is important, why we as believers, as people of faith, have to participate in this now more than we ever had to before. So it is a joy and a delight to be here. I am here tonight in my scholarly capacity. There might be a little preaching, but I'm here tonight in my scholarly capacity because what I really want to talk about for the few minutes allotted to me is about locations of transformation. Locations of transformation. So let me begin with a story from 1964. It is 1964 and it is Mississippi. There is an organization and it is called Wednesdays in Mississippi. And what this organization does is fairly simple. It was to bring cultured, educated women from the northern states to meet their sisters in Mississippi at a local church. The location of the church would change, but the women who were coming together, northern cities and southern cities, this was an interracial, this was across the generations, this was across even faith lines. And these women came together and they would meet at a local church and they would have tea with one another. When you see images from 1964 of these Wednesdays in Mississippi, what you see are beautifully dressed women. They have on their church hats. They have on their gloves. They are formally attired. They're coming together for this interracial, cross-generational, cross faith lines conversations at various churches in Mississippi. They did this for months and months on end. It included some names of famous women that we know, like Dorothy Height. But for me, what's important about those Wednesdays in Mississippi was that despite the fancy church hats and despite the fancy gloves and the beautiful attire, the real work wasn't in the tea that they were having in the sanctuary. The real work happened in the church basement. Because what a lot of people did not know was that this movement of Wednesdays in Mississippi wasn't just a cultural exchange of white women and Black women and Christian women and Jewish women. These Wednesdays in Mississippi women, they were there to strategize about how to get people to register to vote in Mississippi, a place that had the most stringent anti-voting legislation in the nation. These women would take off those hats. They would take off those gloves. They would actually go on down into the church basement and they would pull out pieces of paper and they would pull out maps. They were there for business. The tea was upstairs, but the location for transformation was downstairs in that church basement. And that's what I think about when I think about the voting booth. The voting booth is a location
for transformation. In 1964, these women got it. They got that if they were able to not only register people to vote, but if they were able to ensure that they could safely access the vote, it would transform the nation. It would transform the world. In a time and in a place in which it was against the law for many African Americans to vote, in a time and a place where there were poll taxes and literacy tests determining who had the right to vote, these women were willing to risk it all in the church basement. And so I want to think about locations of transformation, because we cannot, according to the scripture, despise our small beginnings. What started off as just a few women getting together for tea, which was actually a radical strategy for voting rights in the basement, spawned a movement. And that movement, we are inheritors of today. Somebody worked real hard for a long time to ensure some of us had the right to vote. There's another location of transformation that's important to me, because as a good church girl, I'm interested in what happens in those church basements. One of the things that you know about transformation is that its location isn't always where we think it will be. As a matter of fact, my next story about a church basement reminds us that sometimes the most powerful words you will hear doesn't actually come from the pulpit. This second story about a church basement. It is months before the March on Washington. There are churches in both the North and the South that are preparing to send buses of people to the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, that iconic event where King offers his I Have a Dream speech. Well, some churches, in order to raise funds to rent the buses, to send their members, decided, let's use the church basement. And they cooked up some chicken dinners and fried up some fish, and they sold these dinners. There's one church in particular in Alabama that wanted to send men and women to the March on Washington. And so for 6 months, they cooked, and the women of the church sold dinners. At the end, they went to the pastor of the church and they said, Pastor, we've raised this money from selling these chicken dinners, from selling these fish dinners, from selling these sweet potato pies and this cornbread. And the pastor's like, wow, look at this money that we've raised. We'll be able to send an entire busload. Sisters, who's going? Tell me when we're going to leave. And those women said to him, while we raise the money, we're not going to be the ones to go. We want to send a busload of the young people from this church to that March on Washington. And they took the money that they had raised from cooking in the church basement for months, and they sent 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds to that March on Washington. This is our legacy. This is our inheritance. These are small things. These are small church basements. This didn't come from the pastor. This didn't come from the denominational leadership. This came from every member who participated having a heart to see young people engaged in civic activity. That's why we're here tonight. We want to see everyone who is of voting age engaging in their civic activity, their duty, their right as an American citizen to participate in the vote. It can be transformative. When you go and you cast a vote, you are simply making a declarative statement that not only am I made in the image and likeness of God, but God has gifted us with the discernment to participate in the governance of our nation. That church basement of those women in Mississippi and that church basement in Alabama with those chicken and fish dinners, they actually transformed a nation. These weren't small things. These were significant things. They had repercussions. They were the stones that rippled in the water. Because guess what? Among some of those 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds that went to the March on Washington, who weren't even old enough to vote, but who recognized their parents' sacrifice. An entire generation of civil rights leaders were born. That 16-year-old who got to hear King declare that he had a dream became the 18-year-old who voted for the first time after the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the legislation that allowed African American people in the largest numbers possible to be able to vote. So, what do I want you to think about tonight? I want you to think about the small things. I want you to think about the locations that can be transformative, including that voting booth. But I also want you to think about the fierce urgency of now. The fierce urgency of now. This election matters. And it matters not just at the presidential level, it matters at the local level. One of the things that you're going to do when you go into that voting booth is, depending on your city or state, you are going to be voting for a whole cast of people. You are going to be casting your ballot maybe for a sheriff, maybe for a prosecutor. You'll be casting your ballot for a council person. You'll be casting your ballot for school board members. Your school board members in your city or state will determine what the next generation of children will read in their school curriculum. So when you go, you have to recognize the fierce urgency of now. This is about the next 4 years, but this is also about the next decade. Who are going to be the people who enact legislation in your city? Who are going to be the people who determine what textbooks are going to be used in your school? Who are going to be the men and women that will lead your city, your state into the next decade? Leadership matters. And leadership isn't just who's running things. Leadership matters at every single level. You are a leader when you walk into that voting booth. You are declaring yourself a responsible citizen when you say that it is up to me to have a role in the next generation of the people who are going to be bringing us into the next era. Everything changes. The question is sometimes asked, what's on the line? Everything is on the line. Whether you have access to health care is on the line. Whether or not funding for your public school system is increased or decreased, that's on the line. Whether or not we are able to break the cradle to school to prison pipeline, that's on the line. Your vote matters, not simply because we elect a president. Your vote matters because your civic participation tells the leadership of this entire nation that what I do matters, and the leaders we elect have to be accountable. Okay, I'm back to the church basements because they're important in this story. These women who cooked up these dinners, who sent those children to the March on Washington, accompanied them to the bus. And as is the tradition in many of our faith communities, we prayed for a safe journey. They prayed that the children would get there safely. They prayed that the teenagers would be able to return safely. But there was something else in their prayer. They prayed that whatever they received as they traveled to Washington, D.C., would make them accountable for all of the people who could not go. There are some people who will not be able to cast the ballot, but I want you to know that you have a responsibility for those who cannot, for those who, unfortunately, because of their citizenship status, or those who, because of whatever reason, have not been able to cast a vote. You have an accountability for all of those in your community and those outside of your community as well. I want you to walk into that voting booth, if you have not already done so, with a weight that is on your shoulders. Or as the great American novelist Toni Morrison would say, there is a bird in your hand. And what you do with that bird that is in your hand has consequences for all people, all citizens, all men and women. You vote your conscience. You use the discernment that God has given you. Pray, fast, whatever you need to do. But know that there is a responsibility that comes with being a believer. The political is personal. And then we, as people of faith, are called to participate in all of the things that affect us. These things affect our churches, they affect our neighborhoods, they affect our communities. You get to be a participant in it. If in fact, we should remind people, this is pre-COVID, when many of us were still gathering in our houses of worship, and our leaders would say, you should joyfully come to the offering table. That it is a joy to be here. That all that you have been blessed with, to share a portion of that is a joy. I want you to joyfully go to the voting booth. I want you to joyfully go to the polls because you have been so blessed that we are here alive, healthy enough to cast a ballot. Whether that was by mail, whether you went to vote in person, whether you were waiting until Tuesday, go with joy. That's what was happening in those church basements, in those church kitchens. They were serving with joy. They were serving with pleasure. They were knowing that the thing that they were doing was beyond just the moment in time, that there would be a ripple effect to meeting, to getting together, to looking at those maps, to accompanying people to the polls, to sending the teenagers and the children. There would be a ripple effect. So I challenge you to go with joy to the polls. I challenge you to feel the fierce urgency of now. I challenge you to know that you can be faithful in the small thing because the small thing isn't so small. It's actually quite big. I challenge you with the full armor to go to make your voice known, to cast your vote, to participate in all of the civic activity that is allotted to you, knowing that this is your right, this is your privilege, but more important, it is your legacy and your inheritance from our ancestors and our forebearers. They're watching right now, that great cloud of witnesses. We have a right and a privilege that many of them did not have. And so it is with joy and with honor and with pride and with a sense of responsibility that I have cast my vote. And I ask that you do the same. May God richly bless you all, and know, be faithful in the small things, and God is going to multiply it. And we can see transformation in all of the small places of our nation. God bless you.
My. Dr. Pierce, you just elevate. Whether it's Princeton, you elevate. You go to Howard, you elevate. So guess what? We're going to have to give you another opportunity to elevate again and drop knowledge through stories and a little preaching every now and then. I saw how you weaved it in. I just want you to know I saw how you were weaving and navigating and hitting the points home. So you caught our conscience, and we have a responsibility to vote. What do you say, Carmela?
Oh my goodness, you're talking about the joy. Have we not seen the brothers and sisters on the line doing the line dances when the lines are long? People are saying, this is an event. We're going to make the best of it no matter what happens, because this is a privilege and an opportunity to get out there. I love the fact that those things that you brought out, and it brought out to me yesterday, just like, I had to go back to this. Yesterday, we stood out there and we went to vote. You were talking about the school board and how even that vote It matters now for our children, and it matters in the near future and in the years to come. We walked into that place yesterday, and the woman who was running for school board in my area, she says, I'm this person right here. She was wrapped up with gloves and hat and mask and everything. I said, what did you say? She said, no, yeah, this is me. This sign, this is me. She says, I'm out here because I want you to know that I care about what happens to your children. And I was very happy about that, because I'm like, you better care. Yes, if we're going to trust our vote with you, you got to care. And so I'm so inspired. Thank you, Dean Pierce, for that good word. It is so wonderful to meet you and see you. Thank you so much for blessing us.
Dr. Pierce, we'll catch up next week. God bless you. Thank you for a timely, inspired, and relevant word that was intergenerational and practical for such a time as this. Well, look, after she told that, go ahead. I'm sorry, Dr. Pierce.
God bless you all.
Thank you. Same to you.
After hearing a story like that, we've got to hear the song Amazing Grace. So without further ado, Amazing Grace from Anika Sampson Anderson.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace.
That's so beautiful. Anika. I love to hear Anika Anderson. What a beautiful song. Amazing Grace. Thank you for that. And I'm just, I'm on a riding the wave from listening to Dr. Pierce, Yolanda Pierce. Thank you so much to her. And I just want to introduce and bring on today, right now, Dr. Emil Pigler.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Senior pastor.
The peas in the house.
Amen. Amen.
Church right here in Washington, D.C. It's wonderful to have you, sir. How are you doing?
Well, we're fine. We are honored to be here. This is a wonderful, wonderful program to remind our people that it is important for us to vote. Yes.
Well, hey, we can only go up. You know, we from Howard University to Massachusetts at the church, the Capitol Hill Church, right there in D.C. All we could do is just keep going up. And what better way to go up than the dynamic ministry, as you already said, Carmela, of Dr. Emil Peeler. I'm excited.
Well, we're excited. We're just so blessed. And I was so blessed with Dr. Pierce and every speaker and leader. And, you know I just have just a few moments before and after, but I just want everybody to know that, you know, elections have consequences. And you have the power to decide on the quality that you want for your life. And so this is your life. So just take advantage, take the time to help to decide what you want. But not voting really is giving up your voice. You don't want to do that. You don't want to give up your voice, because elections are decided by the people who go out and vote. So this is why Doc Woods and the others came up with this, because we want to remind, as a collective body of leadership, hey, you lose your voice if you do not vote. So don't give up your voice. And so I want you to know that your power is in your vote. So please, 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 please vote. And thirdly, real practically, it's your money. It's your money. You pay taxes, but do you know how that money is being used? Most of us don't. We don't educate ourselves. But voting is your chance to choose how your tax dollars are spent. That's not unholy. That's not ungodly. It's your money. But number 4, voting is your opportunity for change. See, if you want to make an impact, voting gives you that chance to have an impact. So support the candidates. I remember that when I was in my teens, I was a political intern for Governor Jerry Brown in California, the first Black political intern. And so I saw the workings and the underpinnings of how politics worked as a teenager in the late 70s. And so I want you to understand that politics is real. It's nothing unholy about you understanding how political. So it is your opportunity for change. And number 5, I just want you to understand that the community, if you're part of your community, I'm part of the DMV, or the District of Columbia, the Maryland, and the Virginia area. It's called the DMV. I'm part of your community. My community depends on us. Our communities are made up of friends, loved ones, neighbors, and children. Some may not know how important voting is, while others don't have the privilege to vote. Make the decision to vote for yourself and those around you. Make sure your voice is heard. I want everybody here to pray and vote.
Awesome.
Your loving kindness meets me in my sin. Your grace and mercy covers guilt within. And when I pray, you take away my shame. Demons tremble when I call your name. No, I don't need to walk around feeling down because I messed up. Forgiveness I can find at your throne. The weight of sin I had to bear no more. So every spirit of God that's not of God, I command you to leave. See, my soul belongs to God. My sins and mistakes power of God to save me, the power of God to free me, the power of God to change me. It's the power of God within me, the power of God that holds me. The weight of sin I have to bear no more. See, when I fail you, you still show me love. See, I'm unworthy, but you shed your blood. No need to hide my secrets, for I know undeserving grace is what you'll show. No, I don't need to walk around feeling down because I messed up. Forgiveness I can find at your throne. Ooh, the weight of sin I have to bear no more. Ooh, so every spirit and thought that's not of God, I command you to leave. See, my soul belongs to God. My sins and mistakes could never outweigh the power of God to heal me, the power of God to save me, whoa, the power of God to free me, whoa, the power of God to change me. It's the power.
Well, Dr. Peeler, I know you're going to close us out. So let me give us that time back to you.
Amen. Amen. You know what? We need to ensure that the marginalized, the voiceless, the disadvantaged are able to be heard and be served. We are the product of the Voting Rights Act, and it's an act that was brought and paid for on Edmus Pettus Bridge down in Selma, Alabama. And they had foot soldiers who had believed that they had the right to be there. They stood up and they crossed the bridge. They were the wings of the eagles that Isaiah, I believe, talked about. It may have looked like feet crossing that bridge, but I believe it was flight. I want to encourage everybody. I thank God for Ed Woods. I thank God for Carmela. I thank God for every preacher and teacher that is here today to remind us that it is your absolute privilege and duty to vote. So November 3rd, we want to see you there because your vote can make a difference. God bless you.
My, Carmela, what do you say when you got Dr. Peeler, who looks like he's got an endorsement contract with Adidas, dropping the mics like it's hot?
I love me some Adidas. This is Sabbath rest. Oh, we've worked all hard, and I'm not representing you, but you know, if I could get
you represent deal, well.
I will let you know. Okay,
you represent God. Very well. The content can't be ignored. The content can't be ignored.
Amen.
But if we didn't give you a little ribbon,
Praise
you
God.
wouldn't think we were real. What do you say, Carmela, to the great bishop himself?
I got nothing to say. I know that music was beautiful. That's for sure. Young lady, what you said, Carrie L. Coates? Wow.
Yes, Carrie L. She's an awesome minister, and she's very inspiring. That was the original song that she wrote, and she is an up and coming. I believe that God has so much because she's anointed, she's talented, she's humble, and God is just bringing her to the next level. Carrie L. Coates.
A here and now. That's what we call that. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doc. Greatly appreciate you. We'll catch up next week.
We are honored. All right. We are honored. God bless you. Praise God.
All right. Carmela, we are going down south to a battleground state in Ohio. Now, they call it Cincinnati, but they got a young minister there that's tearing it up, kicking down doors, and taking no prisoners or names, none other than the great bishop, the pastor of the Shiloh Cincinnati Church, Brian Smith. Look at this distinguished brother as he comes on the screen and talks to us from the battleground state of Ohio.
Good evening. Tonight, I take a
Pastor
moment
Brian Smith,
to admonish and encourage our brothers.
But you got to come off mute.
There you go. There you go.
My brother, welcome.
Hey, you hear me now? Hey, after you gave me that wonderful introduction, I had to be on mute, huh?
But bring the word, preacher. We just want to hear the word.
Appreciate it, Doc. Good evening, everybody, and greetings from Cincinnati, Ohio. You know, I just want to let you know there are just under 8 billion people on this planet, and it is easy to feel like you are one of just many, especially in the day-to-day hustle and grind of life. The temptation is to think that you're just a number, just an ID badge, just another worker on the assembly line, just a cog in this great machinery of life. And as a result, we tend to undervalue or not appreciate our role in kingdom business. Cynicism and pessimism are the soundtracks of our generation. And there are some who are tempted to believe that it doesn't matter how they feel or what they want, that their voice will ultimately be drowned out by that select few or those special individuals. Whatever candidate is elected, we don't trust our government, no matter who's in power. But I want to talk to somebody today, whoever it is, who is thinking about sitting this one out. Any person who's listening today who thinks that your vote doesn't matter. I want to remind you of something very key and very crucial. As a Christian, it is about responsibility and accountability. You hear what I said? Responsibility and accountability. Paul reminds us of our responsibility in Romans chapter 13. He tells us to render unto Caesar what is Caesar, pay our taxes, and do what we're supposed to do. Paul tells us that our right to vote reminds us of the command to act responsibly as stewards of the freedoms that God has entrusted to us. Motivated by our love for each other, our desire to see good happen to all men, we ought to be good stewards of what God has given us. So every one of us has an influence, and God expects us to be good stewards of that influence in kingdom business. It's about responsibility. We have a responsibility. Secondly, it's about accountability. One day, all of us will have to give an account to God. That's what Paul tells us again in the next chapter of Romans. And our voting is not exempt from that accountability we give to God. We have to understand, just like Matthew 25, where were you when the people were hungry? Where were you when the people were thirsty? Where were you when the people were naked and imprisoned? Where were we? Did we lend our voice? Did we speak up? Were we held and accountable, or did we allow this moment to pass? And finally, just like Mordecai told his cousin Esther, who knows that God has us here for such a time as this? I want to encourage each and every one of us to know our spiritual responsibility and to know that one day we have to give an account to God of the freedoms and the influence that he's asked us to take care of. God bless each and every one of you. Go out and vote and be blessed now by this word and song by our very own from Cincinnati, Shiloh, Justin Merrill.
Praise God. From Cincinnati, Ohio, we give you greetings, and we know that God is able to do exceedingly and abundantly, especially in this election year. So we pray that this would bless you, and we know that God is going to move exceedingly abundantly above all you could ask or think, according to his power that worketh in you. Come on. Just what he said he would do. He's gonna fulfill every. So don't give up, because he won't. Come on, everybody, say it like this. He's able Oh, come on, put your hands together out there. Yeah, yeah. Come on, let's take it up. Oh, just what he said he would do. He's not a man that he should lie. Every word, it will not return void. So don't give up, because he won't. Real big, real big. He's able. Hey. Yeah, y'all got it. Come on, let's sound the war cry out there. Come on, let's say this. Whoa, he's able. Come on, let me hear y'all say that. Come on, let's take it up. He's able. Come on and sing. He's able. Come on. He's able. He's able. He's able. He's able. Whatever's going on in your house, my God, he'll work it out. He's able. He's able. He's able.
Thank you. Oh, Dr. Smith, close us out with a charge.
Listen, everybody, don't just vote on the top of the ticket. Vote all the way up the ticket, from local issues to national issues. Don't just think that your vote stops right here. It affects your relatives, your friends in other places. There are key and important races happening all over this country. And lastly, it does not stop with this presidential election. Voting happens every year. Please, we got to stop this getting on and getting off the bus thing. We got to stay engaged every year so that we can affect what happens both locally as well as nationally. God bless you. Remember, it's about responsibility and accountability.
I like that, Carmela. I can work with that responsibility and accountability, and that things take place around the election cycle. So it's not just voting. You got to do some stuff in between the election cycle in order for accountability and responsibility to be a reality. I just wanted to rhyme a little bit.
Oh yeah, I see how you did that. You know, you're right. The preparation and the engagement is year round. That's our duty. So whether you're talking, you know, like you said, not just voting the top of the ticket, but it is also being prepared on a weekly basis. You got to put down, you got to find out when the city council meets. You got to find out when the school board is doing what it does. You have to find out and be engaged all the time, all the way up and down. That's what it means to be a part, light and salt in this community. You know what? I see somebody in the waiting room.
Our next presenter.
Oh my goodness.
He looks familiar. He has a whole lot of hair. I wonder if people are going to be able to recognize him.
I don't know.
I just don't understand how people cannot recognize him. The voice is so distinguished. Yes. But from the U.S. Dream Academy, founder and CEO, and the senior pastor of the Palm Bay Church in the Southeastern Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. You know, he just did a concert last week for the whole entire conference. Mm-hmm. He had a gala for the U.S. Dream Academy, raised a bunch of money for kids. I mean, which is a soft spot for him. Mm-hmm. He talks to Democrats and Republicans. He knows how to work both sides of the aisle. He's a former, public affairs and religious liberty director for the North American division and worked with the General Conference. I mean, Carmela, with the head full of hair and the wisdom beneath it, what more can we say about the elder bishop doctor himself, Whitley Phipps?
Oh my goodness.
Hey, my brother. Hey, you keep talking like that, you're going to lose your hair. Oh. Hey, just keep living. I don't know if you know, I started losing mine when I was pastoring members, you know what I mean?
Oh, mercy,
and,
Lord.
And,
that's not how we want to end Pastor Appreciation Month, Doc.
Yeah, that's right. And I started growing my hair really long because I got the male pattern baldness. I grew it really long, and then I flip it all forward and style it like an afro, you know? But it got to be too stressful, always having to walk backwards in the wind. You know, when you get up in the morning, you're checking the temperature and the wind velocity. Something's wrong, you know.
My pastor, I was not one of those members that would have caused that.
Well, hey, and I got to say, my brother, you doing the shows by yourself is wonderful, but you took it up a notch with Carmela. You took it up a notch.
Well, you know, you need a partner. You need a partner. You need a partner and someone, you know, who will be with you in the thick and thin. And Carmela, that's my girl. And I appreciate all that she's poured in. And if it's a notch, I think it's exponentially better simply because Carmela is here.
Now, she owes me a call. So you got to remember that, Carmela.
I do.
All right.
All right. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our brother, our pastor, gospel recording artist, none other than Elder Bishop Dr. Pastor Wintley Phipps.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to share, but then I want you all to react too. So if you want to ask me any questions, feedback, please do. I want to focus on the heroes and the sheroes who gave so much and gave their all to make it possible for us to go to a ballot box and put in a ballot and vote. Being born in Trinidad, growing up in Canada, arriving in the US in 1972 at Oakwood University, a lot of times people from other parts of the world and often from the Caribbean don't have a sense of the history and the struggle that went on to make it possible for them to enjoy the blessings that they enjoy today. But something happens when it gets inside of your head and heart and system that you are now part of a long line of martyrs and people who have given a lot to make a difference, and that your children who are now born in this country, you have to work and you have to do your best to prepare a better future for them. You often become a radical. You become really focused, you know, and that's why so many of the heroes and sheroes who came along and fought alongside the civil rights leaders of our time were people from the Caribbean. You know, Black Power, that was Stokely Carmichael. Stokely Carmichael was from Trinidad. You know, one of the sheroes that I hold very special in my heart, she was the first Black woman to run for the presidency of the United States. Shirley Chisholm, background Barbados, you know, and but I want to tell a little bit about my story, my journey, my indoctrination, my ability and my being immersed in the Black American experience, the African American experience, to understand a little bit of the struggle. For me, it really began, of course, at Oakwood, of course, traveling through, even in the early 70s in Alabama, on your way to Oakwood, it was an awakening. Back in 1972, you know, you stop to get gas and you go inside and the person behind the counter is a white gentleman, and you didn't realize there are other Black people, he's not going to speak to you. You know, this is what happened to me. So I said, "Excuse me, sir," and I told him what I needed, and he said to the Black man in there, "Hey, boy, see what this boy here wants." You know, all of a sudden, you know, you are in another world, and you begin to understand a little bit about the struggle. But for me, it all changed when I met a man by the name of Dr. Frank Hale. Dr. Frank Hale, who, by the way, is featured in the Civil Rights Hall of Fame for the state of Ohio. Dr. Frank Hale was an Adventist who was on the cutting edge of the civil rights movement. Well, I remember one day, I'm 18, 19 years old. Dr. Hale invited me to go to Chicago to sing for Expo, one of Jesse Jackson's push expos. And I remember there was a moment when Dr. Hale actually, literally, just as I was about to get up to sing, he pulled Jesse and put him in the doorway and said, "You gotta listen to this voice." And I want you to know it was from that moment that my friendship with one of the great civil rights heroes of our time, Jesse Jackson, began. He began to take me with him all around this country and really other parts of the world. I can tell you my first trip to Africa, getting on the plane of the president of Nigeria, President Babangida, and going to Angola, and when Nelson Mandela was released from prison, it was because of Jesse Jackson's invitation that I was able to be there in the crowd to welcome Nelson Mandela when he came out of prison. And of course, Jesse Jackson made it possible for me to sing to the world when he spoke at the Democratic National Convention in 1984. I sang a song called "God Uses Ordinary People." Well, all of that, all of those experiences began to open doors for me to begin to minister to these civil rights heroes and sheroes that I was too young to march with, but God could use my ministry to be a blessing to them. And so Betty Shabazz, it was my honor to know her, meet her. Mrs. King, to sit with Mrs. King, my wife and I, and to hear her tell us stories about her meeting Dr. King for the first time. You may not know, but I was invited to the hospital room to sing for Ralph Abernathy when he had his heart attack. And there I was, again, ministering to the civil rights heroes and sheroes. Dr. Dorothy Height, I would get calls early in the morning. This is Dr. Dorothy Height, and she was the lady, of course, who was there on the rostrum when Dr. King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech. And then, of course, it was my honor to sing for the 77th birthday to serenade Rosa Parks at the Kennedy Center. And so I've got this long list of blessings that I enjoy of ministering to the heroes and the sheroes of the civil rights movement. And it was because of Dr. Hale, and it was because of my friend Jesse Jackson, who I can tell you stories all night long about, but it was just an amazing experience. Well, some of you may have seen me recently when I sang at the memorial service in the rotunda of the Capitol for Congressman John Lewis. Good trouble, Dr. Congressman John Lewis. These are people, all these people, heroes, sheroes, they sacrificed to give us the right to vote. Well, when I sang there, it was my honor. Actually, I was on another call, and my secretary called after he had passed and said, "I've got a phone call for you." I said, "Well, I'm on another line." She said, "It's Congressman John Lewis's office." I said, "Oh, okay, let me hang up." So I hung up and I took the call, and I got the word that the family had been asking that I come and sing and pay a musical tribute to Congressman John Lewis. Well, interestingly enough, as I was getting on the elevator to go to the rotunda, a lady gets on the elevator and she said, "You don't remember me." She said, "But I was the congressman's chief of staff 30 years ago." And she said, 30 years ago, when he was celebrating his 50th birthday, he asked if you would come and sing at his 50th birthday celebration 30 years ago. And you came, and he never forgot it. He's always said you're his favorite singer. And here I was, not even realizing that a kindness 30 years before would result in an opportunity to pay tribute to one of the great, great heroes of the civil rights movement who bled and marched so that we could have the right to vote. So just wanted to share, those are just special memories for me. And I'm so glad, I'm so blessed, I feel so honored, so blessed. I don't have the words to tell you that I feel so blessed that I had the opportunity and have had the opportunity to connect with, to minister with these heroes and sheroes of the civil rights movement.
Wow, wow. What a powerful, powerful testimony, Carmela, of how little can become much when we place it in the Master's hand.
Amen.
Amen. Always a good story. You always got good stories, Pastor.
Well, thank you. It's just my life experience, and I think it's important to tell your story, to tell what has happened, and to give God the glory, because none of these appointments, I've never had a manager, I've never had an agent, I've never had a publicist. As a matter of fact, I tell people, my agent doesn't have a listed home address.
I like it.
But my agent, God has given me hookups from heaven, and that is one of the most powerful of them. And he uses people.
Yeah.
He uses people to be a blessing. That's why I come back to Dr. Frank Hale. Dr. Hale opened those doors for me to get these opportunities. I don't know if you've ever heard of one of the great heroes of the movement was C. Dolores Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
C. Dolores Tucker was, I think, probably the first Black woman to be Secretary of State for the state of Pennsylvania. And she and I were dear friends. And she had, by the way, her heritage came from the Bahamas. Okay. we used to go down there to a school that she set up in the Bahamas. And but just to be able to be a blessing to and to walk alongside with some of these great sheroes and heroes of the movement who made it possible for us to have the right to vote.
Well, we got some more sheroes and heroes among leaders, just like Pastor Wintley Phipps, coming up on a video, Carmela, to tell why vote. First, we had the presidents of the regional conferences that participated, and now we have some additional church leaders who are going to speak to us on the importance of voting across this country. Ladies and gentlemen, check out the broadcast of this video.
Thank you, Pastor Phipps.
Hey, greetings, everybody. Dr. Jesse Wilson here. Listen, Dwight Eisenhower was absolutely correct when he said the future of the republic lies in the hands of the American voter. We need to vote because it's the responsibility of every American citizen. We need to vote because it respects the sacrifices of our elders, of our ancestors. And finally, we need to vote because talk and complaining is cheap. Voting is free. Don't forget to vote.
Hi, I'm Lola Moore Johnston, pastor of the Woodbridge Seventh-day Adventist Church in Woodbridge, Virginia. And I have a question for you. Are you planning to vote? Maybe you're like me. My husband and I went to our local polling place and we were able to cast our ballots early so that on election day, we don't have to stand in line. All we need to do is just turn on our computers or our televisions or our phones and just, see how the ballots count up. But I wanted to talk to you, those of you who may not have already cast your ballot. And I want to encourage you that no matter what happens between now and election day, I want to encourage you to make sure that you vote. A woman was sitting in line for 8 hours just a week ago for her opportunity to vote. Her early polling place had opened and a record high of people showed up on that day to vote. And because of the long line and because there was not enough staff to handle what it is that was this large crowd of voters, it took 8 hours to get to her. And on several occasions, she was tempted to leave. She was tempted to go home. She was sitting in this lawn chair and becoming uncomfortable. Her snacks were dwindling, and the heat was hot. It was a sunny day, and so the sun is beating down on her. And on several occasions, she's saying, "This is too much. I'm not going to do this." But she said she began to think about what her grandparents and great-grandparents had sacrificed in order for that opportunity. And when she thought about their sacrifice, then she knew that she had to brave the elements in order to make her voice heard. And I want to share that with you and anybody who is, kind of thinking about the voter suppression tactics that are happening. Several polling places have shown that there have been police officers who have shown up with paraphernalia in order to manipulate and intimidate voters from voting. We've seen that there have been polling places that have turned people away for what they were wearing. There are certain places where there have been ballots that have been cast and burned in the ballot box. I mean, we've seen voter suppression happen in a way that cameras and that news stories have been able to demonstrate for us like never before. And so, like never before, we have to be insistent. I mean, we have to be determined to have our voices heard. To have our voices heard in the national discourse, to have our voices heard, although we may not be a commentator on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, whatever it is your brand, to have our voice heard, to let whomever know that we want to select leadership who reflects a future that we want for our children and our grandchildren. I want you to just think about 2020 and 2019 and 18 and recognize that the years that we have had, this past cycle that we have had, is a result of us not showing up to make our voices heard in 2016. In 2016, we did more reaction to what the voices were that other people shared than we did actually adding our voice to the acceptable national opportunity that we received through voting. And we don't want the same thing to happen this time. It's going to be hard. It's going to be an uphill battle. Some of you live in areas where people have taken a lot of measures to make sure your voice isn't heard. But I want to encourage you that you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the people who have lived before you to brave the elements and make your voice heard. So, are you planning to vote? I really hope you are.
Hello, friends. I'm here to encourage you to go to the polls and cast your ballot on November the 3rd if you haven't done so or will not do so before. Why should you vote? Here are 3 quick reasons. Number 1, you should vote because leadership matters. It matters who is in the White House. It matters who is in the State House. It matters. Leadership matters. Number 2, your voice matters, and your voice is your vote. If you want to matter, cast your ballot. Your vote will be your voice. Number 3, you must vote because of the rich legacy left to us by our forebears, many of whom died to be able to vote. We need to honor their legacy by casting our ballots today. So again, you need to vote because leadership matters. You need to vote because your voice matters. And you need to vote because of the legacy of our forebears. May God bless you as you cast your ballot on November the 3rd, if not before.
You ask, why vote? Let me give you 3 quick reasons. You know you vote whether you cast a ballot or not. Either you give it up to someone else or you own it and make your own voice heard. 2, when you cast your ballot, you make your voice heard on many levels and issues, not just on a specific candidate election. You declare that you are an active and valuable member of the community, that you affect its economy, and more. And 3, if for no other reason, every one of us must vote in this election and in every election to honor the sacrifices, including the ultimate sacrifice, made by those who came before us to earn the right to vote for us who live in 2020.
I vote. They have all of the answers. I hope that you are working out your plan, now that you know that you have to vote, that you must vote, that you are compelled to vote, I hope that you are pinning your plan if you haven't already done so. How are you going to get there? When are you going to do it? Are you going to leave yourself enough time? Have you done your research? Have you looked up the people? There's so much to this responsibility that we call our civic duty. I'm just impressed and inspired today. We thank all of those church leaders who are so insightful and who hold this so close to your heart, or to the heart, as well as Pastor Wintley Phipps, because this is some good information and very inspirational information. And you know, while we're talking about it, while we're here right now, now's a good time to go ahead and share. If you haven't already done that, share this video, click that share button. Let somebody know that we're trying to get it together, get this energy in the room, so that if you haven't done it, you're going to make sure you got your plan, and that you're going to make sure everybody else around you has their plan. What do we have coming up next, Woody? I think, or I shouldn't even call you Woody in public like this, Elder Edward Woods III. We have a good friend of mine who I know, none other than the senior pastor of the Berean Seventh-day Adventist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, Sherwin Jack. It's so wonderful to see you today, sir. Great to have you.
Distinguished gentleman in his own right. And of
Yes.
course, the dynamic duo of Dr. Sherwin Jack and Pat Jack. And we just want to thank him and still offer condolences in the loss of his brother and the myriad of responsibilities that he's juggled at Atlanta Berean. But he was so dedicated, Carmela, and so committed to ensuring that he was on tonight for such an important broadcast. And we would be remiss if we didn't thank him, not only for his dedication to the Lord that has made him endeared by so many members across the country, but also his commitment in terms of helping us out tonight. So Dr. Jack, thank you, and God bless you.
Well, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this wonderful experience. Woody, it's been good to have journeyed with you thus far, and my sister Camilla, proud of you and what God is doing through you and in your ministry. You are in our prayers, and God has been blessing wonderfully. The whole idea about voting has come to the forefront with such a force that we would be remiss as Christians, as citizens, if we fail to participate. I don't believe that participation hinders our preparation. Matter of fact, while we're preparing for heaven, we are obliged, we are commanded, we are obligated to participate in the civic life of our state, our nation, our country, and especially now. I believe that as Christians, we are called to carry a dual citizenship. First of all, we are citizens of the world, but we're also citizens of the world to come. And so balancing this dual citizenship is critical, and it's important for us. As we study the Word of God, voting specifically is not mentioned by the word vote, but I believe in principle, it's all throughout the Bible. And we have seen godly people down through the years participate in civic responsibilities, signing contracts, paying taxes, and participating in the civic life to enhance and to ensure that all people everywhere are treated fairly and are treated with equity, with compassion and care. The verse that comes to mind is Micah chapter 6 and verse 8. It says that he has showed thee, O man, and what does the Lord require of us? And then he lists three things. Number one, do justly. That is, we promote what is just and equitable for our fellow man, for the common good of the citizenry. And then he says, love mercy. There's so many things in our government, civic life that are not merciful, where compassion is just no longer part of the common conversation or governmental practice. I believe that it's incumbent upon us as people of God to participate, to let our voices be heard. One of my, I don't want to say gripes, but one of my pet peeves today is that there's so much emphasis being placed on rights. And that's true. I'm not diminishing that. But I think the corollary to rights is responsibility. And our responsibility as Christians to God, to our fellow man, to our beliefs, to our principles, to the things that we as a people hold to be dear, it pushes us towards engagement and involvement in our civic life. I believe that as Christians, we must act in ways that promote the public good. One of the ways we do that is to vote. I think that sitting on the sidelines and not being engaged and being so heavenly minded that we're not any earthly good, that time has passed. We must be engaged. We must be involved. What's involved in this vote? Number one, equity. Number two, fairness. Number three, justice. We have to use our God-given influence, our God-given opportunities to promote equity for all. We see that equity is no longer the order of the day. There's so many things that have happened recently in terms of our laws, in terms of appropriations, in terms of even how the census was attempted to be done this year in ways to marginalize and leave certain people out of being considered. So I think it's critical. I think it's crucial. I think it's maybe some may not agree with me, but I think it's ungodly for us to stand by, not become engaged in voting. We here in the Metro Atlanta, we're working along with our other Christian communities, and we're making sure that people have access to the polls. We have rides to the polls where they're voting and their neighborhoods are identified. Our church has served as a polling place, voting for other types of governmental duties. And we're doing all that we can because I believe it's incumbent upon us to do all that we can do and all that we must do in this particular time. Romans chapter 13, we can look at it, we can read it, we can parse it. But here again, it is forcefully brought to bear upon Christians to be engaged in civic activity and to carry out our civic responsibility. So my plea, my prayer, my admonition to us all is that we vote. We see what has happened to us the last 4 years. What has happened is has brought to the surface that which was beneath the surface, that which was sort of in disguise, sort of camouflage, but now it is clear. The line of demarcation has been drawn. And those of us who call ourselves children of God, while we prepare for heaven, we must participate here on earth. The Lord says, occupy until I come. That's in every aspect of life. You cannot sit by and allow injustice in criminal codes and sentencing laws. The sentencing disparities are very clear. Here where we live in Atlanta, the jails are filled with our young Black men, and the laws are skewed against us. And so by participating, we are providing a platform where equity, fairness, and justice can have an opportunity to make sure that all citizens are treated fairly and treated with a kind of love and compassion that I believe is due to them. As a church in the past, we have not been as engaged, except for individuals, but as a movement, we have sort of been passive. But I think that time has come and gone, and I am so delighted. I am so encouraged by the younger pastors who are taking this thing to the street. They are pushing some of us who may be a little older to realize that we must preach the gospel, but we must preach an entire gospel, not a partial gospel. Gospel that not only addresses the there and then, but a gospel that addresses the here and now. So I'm giving a shout out to my young colleagues to keep it up. You're keeping us encouraged. You're keeping our feet to the fire. And I believe that nothing but good will come out of all of us together, uniting our voice, our vote, and our values to ensure that all of our citizens, even the ones that we disagree with, are treated with equity and fairness, have opportunity for participation in the good things that this great country has to offer. So that's my word of encouragement to all of us tonight. I am so happy to have just a few moments to share with you, Woody, my brother, and my sister Carmela, and all the other pastors. Some of them I don't know personally, but I follow your ministries, and I'm in your amen corner, because a lot of what needs to be done will be carried by you. So God bless you. We are here. We're going to do all that we can for as long as we can by and through the grace of God. Go vote. Make a difference. Let your voice be heard.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Sherwin Jack, Senior Pastor of the Atlanta Berean Seventh-day Adventist Church on Holmes in Atlanta, Georgia. My, Carmela, what can we say?
Not much after that. Pastor Jack, I just love what you're saying because you're connecting the dots. This is, voting is not in the abstract.
No.
As a person who has defended people who have had to go into court for criminal matters, and your people are there and you're working to make sure that you have money to bail people out, you're putting the house up, you've got the whole line, whether it's the district attorney or the prosecutor, the police that are involved, everybody down the line, part of your vote is part of what influences that, the judges that hear those cases. And so what you say, Pastor Jack, is very important. It does affect our lives. And now is the time to get engaged.
Yes, thank you so much. We have to be engaged. We are mandated by the gospel to be engaged. We see what complacency, how it morphs into complicity. So we are partially to be blamed for our current status. But I know, believe, feel within my spirit, change is in the air. Not just political change, but the sense of agency that we as a people have always had. And when exercised, it does not only good for our community, but it has a collateral effect to all communities as it promotes the common good of all. God bless you. We'll see you in the ring because we're going to be.
Speaking of engagement, Carmela, we have the Pastor Dr. Andrea Trustee King, and none other than our institution, the Big OU, the Oakwood University, under the leadership of Dr. Leslie Pollard as president, and they're going to share with us voting. Dr. Andrea, from a women's suffrage standpoint, and then Oakwood University from a young adult standpoint. Check out the reasons why you should vote from these distinguished individuals.
I'm Leslie Pollard, president of Oakwood University, and we're in the beautiful Peters Media Center, and we are here today to let you know that your vote matters. Recently, I read a quotation on a t-shirt that really struck me. It said the following: vote like your ancestors died for it. What an important message. Today, I've got two of our outstanding student leaders who have driven Oakwood University's voter registration program, especially among our students. We've got Mr. Jordan Thompson, who is the president of the United Student Movement, and then we've got Ms. Brianna Dean, who is the parliamentarian for our USM, our United Student Movement. Welcome, everybody. Welcome.
Hi, Dr.
Welcome to
Pollard.
both of you. I am so excited that we can talk a little bit about why voter registration and why voting matters, especially in the HBCU community. Jordan, when you hear the word vote, what does that mean to you?
Well, to me, voting is one of the most important things that somebody can do. I think it is the core of our democracy, and I think it's our civil duty to make sure that we participate and make sure that our voices are heard.
Amen. Amen. And Brianna, you were instrumental in driving our entire voter registration for our students. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us how it went, and then what were the results of your work?
So our USM voter registration drive was absolutely amazing. We had our first registration drive on September 27th. It was a fun Sunday block party. We wanted it to be exciting. We wanted students to get excited to vote, but more specifically, register to vote. So between that and another smaller registration drive we had October 9th through the 13th, we were able to register over 400 Oakwood students. And the rest of the students either filled out an absentee ballot so they can vote in their state. I think students were very, very excited to register. We have a lot of first-time voters. So we just explained to them the importance of voting, but more importantly, the value in their vote.
Amen. Amen. And there you've heard it. coming straight from the campus of Oakwood University and straight from a generation of student leaders who are determined that their voices will be heard. We encourage you to vote. Vote like your ancestors died for it, and they did. So take this opportunity to express your voice and through your vote, and we will all be blessed. We pray for you. We thank you so much. And again, coming from Oakwood University, voting matters, and we encourage you to get out and to vote.
"2020 marks the 100-year anniversary of women's suffrage, or women's right to vote. In case you're wondering, yes, that means that this country took over 140 years to allow this privilege to its mothers, its wives, its sisters, and its daughters. But 100 years ago, not all women were allowed to vote. Actually, it was just white women. And I have to be honest, I felt some kind of way about the women's suffrage movement, especially because many on the front lines of this crusade worked hard to make sure Black people did not have the right to vote. The famed Susan B. Anthony stated, "I will cut off this right arm of mine before I will ever work or demand the ballot for the Negro and not the woman." Despite their protests in 1870, the 15th Amendment was passed, which gave some Black men the right to vote. And so in 1872, Sojourner Truth went to the polling place. She wanted to vote with the brothers, but they turned her away. It was that same year that Susan B. Anthony also went to the polls to vote. Not only did they not allow her to vote, they arrested her, brought her to trial for attempting to vote. And so the fight continued. Black women and white women alike both fought for this right. Now, after a long fight 100 years ago, it was granted to women. And it would be another 28 years before Native Americans were allowed to vote. It would be another 30 years before Asian Americans were allowed to vote. It would be 41 years before the residents of the District of Columbia would be allowed to vote. It would be another 45 years before African American men and women were given the right to vote. It would be 51 years before young people aged 18 to 20 would have the opportunity to vote. That's right, young people. If this election had taken place 50 years ago, you would not be able to vote in it. And it has only been 45 years since many in the Latinx community have been able to vote. Voting is power, and it has been guarded ferociously. Even now, people are looking for ways to take that power out of your hands. That's why it is so important that you use your power to vote. People have fought and died for this right to vote. It has been passed on to you, and I pray that you will use it, that you will take advantage of it. Yes, God created us all equal, but it has taken centuries of struggle to create an equal vote. And so the power is in your hands. So use it. Even if you have to stand in a long line, use it. Even if it's getting close to the deadline, use it. Even if they change your polling place a third time, use it. Even if before you have been denied, use it. Even if it feels like an uphill climb, use it. It's the only way to get ineffective leaders sidelined. Use it, and maybe we will experience a change this time. Use it. I need you. We need you to use your power to vote.
Dr. Andrea Trustee King, for that powerful word. And it's a reminder that, we may take it for granted. The voting cycle happens like rain, right as rain. It comes around, but it's been in recent memory for many of us that some of us did not have that vote. And we have to not take it for granted. We have to get involved, get engaged. We also want to thank the Oakwood University president, the distinguished Dr. Leslie Pollard, and the students there at Oakwood, of which I have one myself.
All right, all right.
Oakwood is in our blood and in our family. And I'm impressed at this impressive and stellar lineup of folks just to help us get engaged. Edward Wood, I thank you so much for just all of this. Every time we talk to these folks, this is interesting to me. It's good information.
Well, Carmela, you know how we do it. You got the message, and we're the Conscience and Justice Council. So we got to get the information out. But Carmela, I got my brother in the house. I'm born and bred Lake Region Conference. It doesn't matter. But one of my brothers in the house, Dr. William J. Lee, he's from the Highland Avenue Seventh-day Adventist Church. And, we say in Lake Region, every good thing comes from Highland, because not only are we the church in Benton Harbor, but we're also the church where a lot of the seminarians who did their field work and their internship, they did it at Highland. And so there's a little swag and a little pride when folk from Highland do well. And from the Shiloh Seventh-day Adventist Church, the senior pastor, the bishop himself, our men's ministry leader in the Great Lake Region Conference, he's not my friend, he's my brother. And I'm so proud of him and his energy, his commitment and dedication to ministry, the support of his wife and his two sons. Please let me introduce to some and welcome to others, Pastor William J. Lee, the doctor himself. Dr. Lee, welcome and thank you for what you're about to share.
All right. Well, listen, Elder Woods and Carmela, it is an absolute joy and privilege to be with you all on tonight. Hey, can I take a moment real quick? I know that you're doing something that you enjoy, but I want to give you a shout out and say happy birthday to you, my brother, so very much. It is your birthday and you are operating in your gift, and we're excited about that, my brother. I appreciate you so very much. And Sister Crawford as well. God bless you, Doc, as well. Listen, everybody, I can't think of a more important time than it is right now. You've heard so many before, but we need to get out and vote right now like we've never done before. You see, in the state of Illinois, where I reside, in the state of Illinois, specifically in the Chicagoland area, we recognize that there are so many things that are on the ballot, so many issues that we're facing right now. Matter of fact, in the state of Illinois, you will recognize that a grocery worker and a CEO are basically paying the same tax. On the ballot in the state of Illinois is this fair tax. And we got to recognize that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poor. It is time that we make our voice heard. It has been said earlier that every soul must get to the poll, that we've got to rally the troops on your social media, on your emails, your texts. We got to do everything possible because we recognize that God is the God of the oppressed. Did you hear what I said? God is the God of the oppressed, the depressed, and the suppressed individuals in our community. And when we go to the polls, we will recognize that we can make a major difference by simply stepping in and letting our voice be heard. I want to remind those, of course, in the Chicagoland area as well, that judges matter. We heard earlier about our school teachers and the curriculum and the city council and the aldermen and all of that. The judges matter as well. Those who are operating in our local districts, who are setting the rules and the laws and regulations. We need to make sure that, especially in the urban city, in our urban community, that our voice is loud and clear. We will not stand for injustice. We will not stand to be second-class citizens. We have a right and a privilege to be able to cast our vote. And I want to challenge everybody, please do not take this for granted. We need to hold our politicians accountable. Once again, we need to ensure that religious liberty is intact for all individuals as well. I want to remind us one more time again that now is the time. Do not wait. I saw on the news just today in Raleigh, North Carolina, that there were individuals, including children, that were pepper sprayed by the police as they were marching, trying to do their civic duty, causing again for us to recognize that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We got to stand in line, bring a chair, bring whatever you have to do, but make sure that you let your voice be heard. This is personal to me. See, my father was from Selma, Alabama, born and raised in Selma, Alabama. I have fond memories of growing up and going from Michigan to Selma, Alabama. My father, he marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. My father, my biological father, my father was swept outside of a grocery store. The water hoses all around. He faced the injustice as a teenager in Selma, Alabama. November 3rd, for me, is personal. For me, as a Black man, I recognize, y'all, that we have a right and a privilege. Our ancestors died. People were, again, were hosed down. Injustice still in North Carolina right now and everywhere. For me, it's personal. My father marched. I've already voted. I allowed my children to recognize and to see the news that's going on right now. I'm encouraging all of us to practice our civic and our responsibility that we have right now on November 3rd or even before. Make sure that we cast our vote because, again, God is concerned about the oppressed, the depressed, and the suppressed people in our community. I know that we're going to see a mighty move. A change is on the way, and I look forward to be a part of that change, not just on November 3, but after November 3. When we got to really get to work, I know we're going to see a mighty move. And I want to challenge you, get involved, do something in your community, raise up, especially some of these Black men in our community who feel as if their voice does not count and does not matter. I want to challenge you, last but not least, everybody counts and everybody matters. That's our slogan in Lake Region. Let's make sure that we exercise our right to vote for such a time as this.
We're an anchor for those who are hurting, a harbor for those who are lost. But sometimes it's not always easy bearing Calvary's cross. We've been ridiculed by those who don't know him and mocked by those who don't believe. But still I love standing up for my Jesus because of all that he's done for me. That's why I'm not ashamed of the gospel. The gospel of Jesus Christ. No, I'm not afraid to be counted, and I'm willing to give my life. See, I'm ready to be all he wants me to be. I'll give up the wrong for the right. No, I am not ashamed of the gospel. No, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. For every moment His hands have held mercy for all the love He's shown in my life. A simple thanks just doesn't show how I'm feeling. I get tears in my eyes.
Of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for that rendition and song. And Dr. Lee was dropping rhymes and words and dimes like he had an experience, and he talked so much about his father, who he loved so much, who took him down to Selma, Alabama, and how this thing is personal. So thank you so much to Dr. Lee and the songstress herself about I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. What a blessing. And Carmela, we're still not done. Bear with us, hang in with us, folk. We're going to continue to go live and impress upon voting. But Carmela, we're in your home state, your hometown of Kansas City. So let me turn it over to you.
I have lots of hometowns and home states. You know, a PK and an Army brat, you know, I just don't have a home. But I tell you, Kansas City is one of them that I love to claim. And my church, the Linwood Boulevard, Seventh-day Adventist, it used to be Linwood Temple, but it's Linwood Boulevard, Seventh-day Adventist Church with the pastor, the Honorable Pastor Joseph Eichner. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. Brother Woods and Sister Monk, I'm so glad to be here. And it's still the temple. All right, I just want to take a moment this evening to talk to my Black men. I want to take a moment to talk to my youth that are voting eligible age. I want to take a moment to talk to my young adults and my mid adults. I want to take a moment to talk to my seniors tonight. Listen, we are on the verge of what many have coined a historic presidential election, one that has the potential of shaping and molding the political framework of our country for years to come. And when you listen to the arguments and the counter arguments, when you listen to the mudslinging and the disrespect from and for the candidates across the board, you might be tempted to say it isn't worth going to the polls. I'm not going to make a difference, so why do I need to worry about it? I'm just one voter. So if I stay at home, no one will notice. But I want to remind you tonight, my people, that it was only in 1965, 55 years ago, that we received our rights to vote under the Voting Rights Act signed by Lyndon B. Johnson. Why should we vote? Because our forefathers and foremothers struggled for that right. Why should we vote? Because we marched from Selma to Montgomery for this right. Why should we vote? Because we were beaten and whipped with nightsticks for this right. Why should we vote? Because we were tear gassed for this right. Why should we vote, you might ask? Because we bled for this right. Why in the world should we vote? Because we died for this right. So I say to you tonight, here in 2020, that we are living in the midst of one of the most turbulent and troublesome times in the history of our nation. We are living in the midst of the heightening of social unrest and racial injustice and racial profiling. We are living in a time where economic inequality is getting worse, and a pandemic that just won't quit, that has claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. And I don't want you to forget that the lives of many of our Blacks have been mowed down and killed in cold blood. I say to you tonight that we have a moral responsibility to make decisions for the moral and the political direction and the future of our country. And it's not just for ourselves. It's for our children. It's for our grandchildren and the future generations that are to come. So we must decide if we are going to have a country to return to the words of our founding fathers. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. We must make a decision tonight if these words will be true for us in this time, but especially for us as Black and brown people. So on this coming Tuesday, November the 3rd, 2020, I won't tell you who to vote for, but I will tell you to exercise your right under the 15th Amendment of the Constitution. On this coming Tuesday, your vote matters. On this coming Tuesday, your vote counts. And listen, folks, at the end of the day, no matter how this thing turns out, I want you to understand that God is still in control, because he sets up kings, tears down kings. He sets up presidents and tears them down. He sits senators and removes them. The same with the House of Representatives. Listen, our country and our lives are in the hands of God. And I think that that's a fitting song that my praise team is going to sing tonight. My life is in your hands.
You're my provider. Oh, how you love to love me. Oh, when I am sick, you are my healer. Oh, how you love to love me. My life is in your hands. You've given me, Lord, another chance just to prove my love again. My life is in your hands. I just really want to tell you I love you. I just really want to tell you I love you. And I just really want to tell you I need you. I just really want to tell you I need you. You are my joy. You are my peace. You are my strength. You're my everything. You are my joy. Yes, you are. You are my peace. Oh, yes, you are. You are my strength. You're my everything. You're my everything. You are my joy. You're my peace. You are my, and you're my strength.
Thanks again, Dr. Thank you so much, and welcome back to the broadcast. Carmela, my life is in his hands. My, and Dr. Joseph Eichner just kept, he has always been an energetic guy, and people respond to him and his ministry, and I'm just excited for what he has done. Moving on to Seattle, Washington. Everybody knows for the last decades or so, if you're going to Seattle, there's other good churches, don't get me wrong, but everyone knows the crown jewel is Emerald City. The pastors know if you're going to Seattle, if you're going out that way, it must have been Dr. Eugene Lewis invited him to come to Seattle. Dr. Eugene Lewis. And now he is the regional director for the Washington Conference. He's still the senior pastor of the Emerald City Seventh-day Adventist Church, and he's recruited some all-star pastors, and they're rebuilding and taking Seattle by storm. And guess what? The facilities may be closed, but church is still operating in the Washington state under his leadership. And we just want to make sure we're inclusive of our brothers and sisters, not just in the regional conferences, but the churches in North Pacific Union as well as Pacific Union, because we have some churches there all wanting the same thing as relates to voting.
Thank you, Dr. Woods, Carmela, for inviting this country preacher to be among the city elites. It's good to be with you this evening. I'm looking for things to get better, my folks. And things indeed will get better if we all get out and vote. The word of God says in Proverbs 29:2, when the righteous increase, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, the people groan. We are facing one of the most important elections in all the days that I've been living on this earth. And I hope you will do more than just pray about it. I hope you'll get out and do something about it by voting if you haven't already voted. Let me remind you quickly of three things: the importance of why it is so important to vote in this election. Number one, you have the right to vote. Psalms 33:12 says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance." We are God's inheritance. Number two, we have a responsibility to vote. James 4:17 says, "Therefore to him that knoweth to do good, and to do it not, to him it is sins." We stand on the shoulders of our forefathers and foremothers who fought and died to give us this right. Let's take advantage of it this election. Let's do things in such a way that we can make a difference in the life of this country, in the lives of our churches, in the lives of our community. Lastly, we have a reason to vote. You'll remember when the king of Persia promoted Haman, the people of that country were perplexed on how he rose to such a prominent position, being the wicked man that he was. Just like we've had an opportunity to see what has happened over the last 4 years. But when righteous Mordecai replaced him, the people rejoiced, they were glad. Likewise, Israel rejoiced when Solomon took the throne, but they rebelled when Rehoboam succeeded him. If we want to see things get better, we have to get out and vote. Let's get out and vote this year in numbers like this country has never seen before. We can make it happen by the grace of God. Let's get out and vote. Let's make a difference. It's time to rejoice. Your vote really matters.
Thank you so much. You are right. The vote really matters. And I appreciate the scripture that you use in here, because there's lots of folks out here quoting scripture and there's lots of different interpretations of different things going on. But the one thing that we know that has been consistent across this night is the recognition that we participate. And that's part of our collective duty, part of our blessing for where we are and where we are in history and where we live in the world. So thank you, Pastor Eugene Lewis from the Emerald City Seventh-day Adventist Church out in Seattle, Washington. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Yes, the future is what we do together. So
without further ado, we want to talk about the future. Thank you so much, Dr. Lewis. Go ahead and finish that thought.
I was just going to say the future is what we do together. So let's put an end to the madness of what we've experienced 2016 through 2020 by joining with me, all of our other religious leaders and members of our community, and vote on or before Tuesday, November 3rd. It's time to rejoice. It's a time to make things better. All of our votes count, matter.
Well, let's hear from the Emerald City praise team at this time.
are my Father. Oh, how you love to love me. Oh, you are my source. There is none other. Oh, how you love to love me. My life is in your hand. You've given me.
Happy Sabbath, everyone, and welcome. We are Emerald City Community's Seventh-day Adventist Praise Team. How many of you know it will get better? It's got to get better.
Yes,
and you
indeed.
know why? Because God is in control. Woo! Listen to these words. People come, and people go. Your life has been out of control. You're confused. Don't worry your soul. It will get better. Better. It will get better. Better. It will get better. Because God is in control. Yes, God is in control. Find your praise. Here we go. Find your grace within your heart. Hold it close. Don't ever depart. It gets cold in the night, but you'll be all right. It will get better. It will get better. It will get better. Better. It will get better. 'Cause God is in control. God is in control. Woo! Whatever state I find myself in, I've learned how to be secure, knowing that God will supply all my needs and He'll work things out for my good. It will get better, better. It will get better, better. It will get better, better, better. It will get 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 better. 'Cause God is in control. Yes.
Yeah.
In control.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Thank you.
Welcome back. My. Things are going to get better because God is in control. You know, we talk about anxiety and depression. Our head elder, Gerard Mose, spoke at my church. And then we had a great panel with the Dr. Deb Spence and Dr. Julian Johnson. And this anxiety and worry about election, we can move it away knowing that God is in control. We want to thank Dr. Eugene Lewis, Pastor Eugene Lewis, and Emerald City Praise Team for that wonderful reminder in message and in song. Carmela, I'm happy to have my brother. When we started kicking off the Conscience and Justice Council, one of the persons we had to get, and I got to thank Pastor Dario Hoy for making this connection because we spoke at the same time at Pelk years ago. And ever since then, Dr. Jamie Colazar and I have been boys. I'm happy for him, proud of his work. He's not just talking about conscience and justice. He's holding rallies, not talking about it. He's holding rallies. You know, not only is he holding rallies, he's speaking at rallies and trying to get people engaged and get his church engaged so that people understand that church just isn't open at 11 o'clock, but church goes out into the parks and to the streets, and it engages the people where they're at. So if you're looking for an active representation of the gospel, if you're looking for an active representation of the ministry of healing in terms of Christ's method of evangelism, we have none other, Carmela, than Dr. Jamie Colazar.
Thank you, Woody. Thank you so much, Woody. I'll make sure that that check gets to you immediately for all those kind words. I'm so honored and so blessed to be here right now to talk about the importance and the power of the vote. And so if with your permission, Woody and Carmela, can I get into the word at this time?
Go, brother.
All right. You have been hearing wonderful messages from the great line of speakers that have come before me and ones that will come after me. And so I shan't take too long. I just want to get right into the text. And the text that I want to highlight this evening is Psalm 82, verses 1 through 8. And I'm going to read the Message translation of the Old Testament Bible. And here's what it said. God calls judges into his courtroom. He puts all the judges in the dock. Enough. You have corrupted justice long enough. You've let the wicked get away with murder. You're here to defend the defenseless, to make sure the underdogs get a fair break. Your job is to stand up for the powerless and prosecute all those who exploit them. Ignorant judges, head in the sand judges, they don't have a clue what's going on. And now everything is falling apart. The world is becoming unglued. I commissioned you judges, each one of you deputies of the high God, but you've betrayed your commission, and now you've been stripped of your rank, busted. Oh God, give them their just deserts, because you've got the whole world in your hands. For the next few minutes, I just want to talk about holy dissatisfaction. Justice must never be an afterthought for believers in God, because we are called to uphold the Bible truths, which declares liberty and justice for the downtrodden and the oppressed. Not only are we called to support and live by it, but we must also speak truth to power to the people and systems that continue to create a permanent underclass. In the book, Where Do We Go From Here? Martin Luther the King Jr. said this: let us be dissatisfied until America will no longer have high blood pressure of creeds and an anemia of deeds. Let us be dissatisfied until the tragic walls that separate the outer city of wealth and comfort from the inner city of poverty and despair shall be crushed by the battering rams of fires of justice. Let us be dissatisfied until they who live on the outskirts of hope are brought into the metropolis of daily security. Let us be dissatisfied until slums are cast into the junk heap of history and every family will live in a decent sanitary home. Let us be dissatisfied until the dark days of yesterday's segregated schools will be transformed into the brighter tomorrows of quality integrated in education. Asaph in our text is dissatisfied. Why? Because leadership has corrupted justice for so long. And our yet to be United States of America, or the US of A, United States of Anxiety, everybody watching this has seen how judges have corrupted justice for so long, and the world is falling apart. Asaph is tripping because he does not understand why is this happening. They've been appointed, but they have been disappointing the people. And so Asaph speaks truth to power. He calls them head in the sand judges. Asaph is looking at his world and he is seeing something is wrong. There is a disconnect, and I'm sure most of us can feel the same thing as well, because why? When you elect a clown, you get a circus, and that's what's happening in our country right now. We have a circus pandemic. We have injustice. We have death by the hands of police. And so Asaph is saying this, that in order to change a corrupt judicial system, you have to do your part and call it out. And so how do we call it out? We call it out by using the power of our vote. So we got to get out there on Tuesday and vote. Use what's in your hand to remove crooked politicians who play politics on the people that continue to push us to the margins of society. I've got to quote Dr. Jeremiah Wright before I end this broadcast right now, when Jeremiah Wright says, if you are baking a cake and you put that cake inside the oven, and suddenly you forget to put eggs in the batter or sugar in the batter. You don't take the cake out, crack an egg, and put it on top of the cake. No, you have to re-bake the cake. And that's what I'm saying to everybody who is listening to me right now. We need to re-bake the cake in America. We need to re-bake the cake in Adventism. We need to re-bake the cake, because why? You forgot to put justice inside of the ingredients, equality inside of the ingredients, equity inside of the ingredients. And so ASAP is saying this, that a leader, what a leader is supposed to do is supposed to exact justice to the least of these, but instead they have corrupted it. I'm gonna close out with this. My daughters, as I love them so much, before the pandemic hit, we used to go to museums, y'all. Yeah, I understand my pain. And as we are going to the museum, there is a section inside of the museum, and in that section you can play with toys. And so my daughters wanted to play with toys, and I said, sure, go ahead. But I had noticed that the place was in a mess, and so I let my daughters play, and I said, okay, it's time for us to leave. Do you know that my daughters were putting the blocks and the toys back into the right place? I said to them, come on, let's go. That place was a mess before you got there, but they were cleaning it up. And it dawned on me that as young as my daughters were, that they were saying this, Daddy, we want to clean up the mess for those that are coming behind us so they don't have to deal with it. And that's what a leader is supposed to do. That's the kind of leadership that you want. But isn't this a sad testimony that our women are always cleaning up the mess that we men leave behind so that others can have a future? But that's a whole nother sermon that I'm going to preach. But all I'm saying is that you got to get out and vote. If you pay taxes, you got to raise your voice and call out injustice by using your vote, because you not only vote for yourself, you vote for the people who have been pushed to the margins. And at the end of the text, it says this, that our God is in control. God is in control of all things. So in spite of what's going to happen, God is in control. In spite of COVID-19, God is in control. In spite of COVID-45, God is in control. In spite of the injustice and the wickedness we see in this world, God is in control. And I close out like this. An airplane is an amazing machine. And this is what's dope about an airplane is that turbulence doesn't always make a plane crash. It's an engine malfunction, because why? Whoever built the plane built it in such a way that it can maneuver through turbulence. And that's what I'm saying to somebody in here today. You can make it because the God that we serve has planted us in such a way that we can make it through the turbulence of injustice. But say, we can't sit back and relax and think that things are just going to get better. We have to vote, V-O-T-E. You should have already voted already, but if you didn't, November 3rd is your chance to make your voice heard. Why? Because God is in control. We got to remove wickedness in high places so that we can see justice for all people. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's what it is. Beautiful.
I shall not fear the arrow by day, nor shall I fear the terror by night. The God who governs angel armies has set encampments around me. Whom shall I fear? I shall not fear the arrow by day, nor shall I fear the terror by night. The God who governs angel armies has set encampments around me. Whom shall I fear? I shall not fear the arrow by day, nor shall I fear the terror by night. The God who governs angel armies has set encampments around me. Whom shall I fear? 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 The God who governs angel armies has set encampments around me. Whom shall I fear? 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 The God who governs angel armies has set encampments around me. Whom shall I fear?
Oh, that is some good solace and comfort for the heart. And during these times when you have to take a little courage and pack a lot of patience to be able to get out there and do what you need to do as you do your civic duty. I thank Dr. Jamie Kalisar so much for stopping by and for that beautiful music that's so inspiring. What's going on now?
Well, you know, if you go to the West Coast,
I see somebody in the waiting room that's coming in. That's our dear friend. Come on.
Yeah, oh, we got a preacher in the house. We've had preachers up and down all around, from Dr. Andrea and Dr. Lola, but there's another preacher that's in California, another preacher that's in the Inland Empire. I know I marginalized him, Carmela, for that one sermon he preached at Highland, but he has plenty more in his repertoire than high definition living. And if we were to modify it in 2020, it would be 4K. But this is a preacher par excellence. You can catch him every other Tuesday with the Pelk preaching series, along with Dr. Gamal Alexander. He's a friend to many, but he stirs up the consciousness of all when he brings the breath of God through his speaking. So let's not hold back the preacher, because he's got 180 seconds we want him to take to bring life and power as we go to the polls on November 3rd, the senior pastor of the Kansas Avenue Seventh-day Adventist Church in Riverside, California. Let's welcome our brother Carmela, Dr. Ainsworth Keith Morris.
Thank you so much, my good friend. Thank you for the opportunity of being here with you, Carmela and Woody. So great to be with you. It has been a tremendous afternoon. And in the words of that song, what can be said that has not yet been said? If you have not been convinced that you need to vote, I don't believe that we can do anything else but to have surgery on your brain so that you will have that implanted in your mind that you need to vote. I have already voted, and I went proudly and voted. I won't tell you who I voted for, but what I can tell you, if my vote counts, we won't have what we're having now. I won't tell you who I voted for, but I'll tell you that you need to pray and ask God to give you wisdom, give you knowledge, understanding on how to vote. There is so much at stake. And we heard through all the speakers this evening about the importance of voting. And my good friend, Dr. Kalasar, just laid it out, put it on the line. You and I, we need to get out and vote. And so, in the words of that preacher who stands last, I will say it like this. In conclusion, to those individuals who feel that God has called them to just focus on heaven and not to think of things on the earth, I will say to you, don't just listen to what you believe God said. You need to follow what God has not said. Like Moses standing at the burning bush, God called him there, commissioned him in Exodus chapter 3. God said to him, take off your shoe from off your feet, because the place whereupon thou standest is holy ground. God spoke to him those words in an effort for him to understand that in God's presence, he needed to worship. In God's presence, he needed to be inspired. In God's presence, he needed to be renewed, revived, and refocused and recharged. And it was good for Moses to be at the burning bush, because there is power at the burning bush. God called him there, and God said, take off your shoe. But that was not all that God wanted Moses to do. God said something to him, but then God did not say something to him. God simply said to Moses, go down to Egypt land. Tell Pharaoh, let my people go. Now, for those of you who missed it earlier in the sermon, you would have heard all the speakers proclaiming in the collective sermon, the combined sermon of the afternoon. They are saying to you, and they're saying to all until Tuesday, that it is time for us to go down to Egypt land and tell Pharaoh to let God's people go. But observe, if you will, at the burning bush, God said to Moses, take off your shoe. But when God gave him the command and said to him, go on down to Egypt land, there is nowhere in the passage where God told him to put on his shoe. God simply expected that Moses, with good judgment and understanding, would recognize that there are some things that God will not specifically say, but you need to do. Yes, Moses, I know that it's exegetically proficient for you to stick around the burning bush. I know, Moses, that you may think it's theologically sufficient to hang around the burning bush. I know you feel that it's inspiring and homiletically efficient for you to hang around, but Moses, you were called to the burning bush not to hang around the burning bush. You were inspired at the burning bush so that you can go on down to Egypt land. And so to every person who feels that God has not directed you to vote, I say to you, don't just listen to what he says. Don't just listen to him telling you to take off your shoe and worship on Saturday or on Wednesday. I'm suggesting to you that God is saying to you, go down to Egypt land and let Pharaoh know that he needs to let God people go. Let God people go, because there are still things to be done. And Moses, the only way for you to get to Egypt is for you to put on your shoes. So as I head out of here this evening and close down this rally, my word to you is simple. Put on your shoe. There are individuals who need to be healed. Put on your shoe. There are individuals who need to be restored. Put on your shoe. There is still sickness out there. Put on your shoe. COVID-19 is not yet over, contrary to what comes out of that house called the White House. Put on your shoe. God wants for you to get on out there, because there is somebody who needs for you to put on your shoe. Yes, when you put on your shoe, rivers of Nile will turn to blood. Red seas will part. Manna will fall from heaven. Water will flow from the rock. You will conquer your enemies. The naked will be clothed. The homeless will be housed. The lost will be found. The afflicted will be assured. The condemned will be cleared. The confused will be comforted. The deceived will be directed. Put on your shoe. The hurt will be healed. The perturbed will find peace. The rejected will be recognized. Put on your shoe. It is time for us to march. Let us put on that shoe and march on down to the polling station. Let us put our fingers with that ink where we need to put it, and let somebody be restored and renewed in this time. I've got a shoe. You've got a shoe. All God's children got shoes. Hey, I'm not waiting till I get to heaven. I'm putting on my shoe, and I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna vote, and I'm gonna let my voice be heard. Put on your shoes.
Total adoration unto you. You reign on the throne, for you are God and God alone. Because of you, my cloudy days are gone.
I can sing
to you this song. I just want to say that I love you more than anything. I lift my hands in total adoration unto you.
God, you reign.
You reign on the throne.
For you are God.
For you are God. Because of you, my cloudy days are gone. I can sing to you this song. I just want to say that I love you more than anything. Love me in your arms.
You are
my shelter.
When all my friends, God, you were right there, yeah.
You were right there all alone.
Never known.
I've never known a love like this before.
Yes.
I just want to say that I love you more than anything. I love you, Jesus.
God, I worship you.
I worship and adore.
Father, I'm here to tell you.
Just want to tell you.
Lord, I love you.
Lord, I love you. More than anything.
Oh, I love worship and adore you. Lord, I stand to tell.
And he closed down the service. I mean, the mic was dropping, and I could hear it in Michigan as it hit the floor in California. My. What a mighty God we serve.
Well, it's been a great night. It's been an inspirational night. It's a night where you got your courage. And like you said, we got to put our shoes on, go do what we have to do. You know, I just want to say this two things. Whatever happens, if you haven't voted yet, you need to go look it up, make your plan, go do what you have to do. If you got a problem, you need to call 1-866-OUR-VOTE and call in the problem. Let them know what you need, if you need some help. And finally, I would say God is in control. So the morning of November 4th, whatever happens, we still got work to do. And I got my shoes on and I'll be there, whatever happens.
For pastors who are listening, if you're in the battleground states, contact the clergy forum. They're looking for pastors to assist at the polls to ensure we have no voter suppression or intimidation. So if you're listening and you want to be a part of it, or if you're coming on late, please check out with the Clergy Council Skinner Williams Leadership Institute so that you can sign up in the battleground states to suppress voter intimidation and voter suppression. Carmela, I just want to thank you once again for being a co-host and, you know, bringing truth to power through Message Magazine, the oldest Black Christian magazine that we have in the country. I want to thank Sheldon Kennedy and Robert Baker for doing the our IT behind the scenes. I also want to give a shout out to my older sisters. I got to call them my older sisters, but they keep me in line because I know I'm not crazy enough to talk crazy to them, Carmela, because I don't want to get slapped down. But when you have double the trouble through twins called Deborah and Denise, you're just grateful. And a shout out to the Lord for how the Lord has brought our brother back home, Patrick Query, the head elder at Emmanuel Brinkland Seventh-day Adventist Church. Dr. Patrick Query, praying for him in his recovery. And they said he was watching the broadcast, and we hope as a result that they were blessed, but want to thank them for their efforts. And then last but not least, my team, the Conscience and Justice Council. You saw them earlier in the About Us video, but I got a phenomenal team in the Conscience and Justice Council, and invite you, those that are listening, to go to the website to www.cjcouncil.org and learn more about the Conscience and Justice Council. Carmela, any few last remarks?
No, just like someone said in the remarks, just vote.
We have it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're happy to close out with prayer with none other than Pastor Henry Wright.
Dear God in heaven, you who announced yourself in the first sentence in the Bible, declaring in the beginning God, you who are the reason and cause of all things, you who are the reason why there is something and not nothing. You are the maker of mankind, and after we sinned, you fulfilled the vow you made before we sinned, and you became our Savior. As we consider this conference, we pray. And we especially pray for this nation. For as man spread over this planet, we have become nations and kindreds and tongues and people. In your providence, you carved out this nation. the United States of America, a miracle nation of farmers and slaves that challenged the empire on which the sun never set. And you have allowed the United States of America to become a beacon of hope for many. We are a nation, one nation of every kindred, tongue,